Good day, everyone. So glad that you're here. A little technical challenge there for a second. So glad to have you with me on another Monday at noon Eastern Time, live with Kevin, and eventually what will be an episode of the Remarkable Leadership Podcast. You see that up over my shoulder. Since you're here with us live, I want you to do me a favor. I want you to go into the um, comment section of whatever social platform you're on and say hello and tell me where you're located. My guest and I would love to know that. Others who are listening or watching will love to know that. Feel free to do that. And once you've got your fingers doing that walking, that gets your fingers used to doing that walking. So there's another reason for me asking you to do that. And that is that while you're here, I want you to imagine that you're joining my guest and I for a cup of coffee. We're sitting around a table, having a conversation. And if you were at the table with my guest and I while we were chatting, if you had a comment, you'd share it. If you had an idea, you would offer it. If you had a question, you would ask it. You would do those things naturally. And so that's what I want you to do here. Even though you're not with us physically, heck, I'm not with my guest physically either, but I want you to treat this as if we were all together. So if you have a question, a comment, idea, share them because it will make for a better conversation and eventually a better a better episode of the podcast, which is what I'm about to do now is start the countdown for Marissa for where we will trim what I've just said away when the podcast is released in a couple of months. So Marissa, this is for you in 3, 2, 1. Being a leader at any level is harder now than ever. It is both complex and important work. And you're listening to this podcast because you want to be a better leader. That's wonderful. My guest and I both believe that we can be successful as leaders and more successful as human beings at the same time. This may be the most valuable conversation you listen to this year because we're not just talking about you as a leader, but you as a person. Welcome to another episode of the Remarkable Leadership Podcast, where we are helping leaders grow personally and professionally to lead more effectively and make a bigger difference for their teams, organizations, and the world. If you are listening to this podcast, you could be with us in the future live on your favorite social media channel. You can learn about live future episodes, when they're going to happen, so you can interact with us sooner and get this information more quickly by joining our Facebook or LinkedIn groups. Just go to remarkablepodcast.com/Facebook or remarkablepodcast.com/LinkedIn to get connected there. We'd love to have you do that. Today's episode is brought to you by my latest book, Flexible Leadership: Navigate Uncertainty and Lead with Confidence. It's time to realize that styles can get in our way and that following our strengths might not always be the best or the complete approach. In a world more complex and uncertain than ever, leaders need a new perspective and a set of tools to create great results for their organizations and teams. That's what Flexible Leadership can do for you. Learn more and order your copy now at remarkablepodcast.com/flexible. Now, with that, I'm going to bring in my guest and introduce him, and we will dive in. His name is Dr. Klaus Kleinfeld. He is the only leader, everybody, to have successfully served as CEO of 2 Fortune 500 giants on different continents, Alcoa in the US and Siemens in Germany. With a nearly 40-year career spanning multiple industries, from established businesses to tech startups, he has advised US presidents and global leaders across Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. As a founder of K2 Elevation, he invests in North American and European tech and biotech firms. He is also the author of Leading to Thrive: Mastering Strategies for Sustainable Success in Business and Life. He's actively engaged in private sector, public affairs, and cultural boards. He's a dual citizen of the U.S. and a European citizen, and he enjoys his work, life, and family near New York, where he's coming to us from today. And he is our guest. And Klaus, I'm glad to have you. Thanks for being here.
Well, pleasure, Kevin.
So before we get to the book itself, in the book, you talk a little bit about your journey. And, there's the journey of business. And I sort of outlined that in the opening. But your whole background your journey that gets you to this point starts earlier than that. And I think telling us a little bit about that will give us greater perspective on you and quite honestly, make us even more interested in wanting to hear what you've got to say. Can you share a little bit about that?
Sure, sure. Born in Germany, raised by parents who had fled from East Germany and started afresh after the Second World War. And the moment things got better, unfortunately, my father died when I was 10. So that threw me into an accelerated phase of growing up and having to work. I got my first paying job with 12 years, and I think since then I've never stopped working and did a lot of things in my life, obviously over time. What also happened, which greatly influenced me. The other thing that greatly influenced me is when my father died, my mother decided that during the vacation time, she went back to work, and during vacation time, she sent me back to visit my relatives in East Germany. So I spent a very fair bit of time in East Germany and during my childhood. And I grew up in a system that obviously was very different to my West German system, and that formed a view on a concept that unfortunately there are some concepts in life that you only realize when things are gone, and freedom is one of those, so freedom that led me to very much appreciate freedom and also realize in how many ways, shapes or forms it comes, and also that sometimes when you don't have it, you can be very courageous to still push the envelope, and that formed me in getting to know people who did that and seeing how they cope with their life in spite of not so nice circumstances that they had to live with. Also younger people, right? So that those two things formed me, and have led me to do things that I did in my life. So by the way, also coming over from Germany here to the US and becoming a citizen, and my whole family is very, very happy here.
Well, we're glad to have you. I'll just say that. I'll say we, the collective we. You and I were talking before I hit the let's go live button, and we were talking a little bit about this book. And, you have a 40-year career history in business, and now you've written this book, and you said something along the lines of, well, I didn't just want to add another business book. So I'm curious, why did you choose to write the book?
Well, what happened is that I have seen and coached a lot of CEOs and leaders, and now that I have a little bit more time, I've accelerated that, and what I noticed is two things. One is that many have not done the job in sorting out their own self, and therefore is holding them back to become very effective. That's one thing I saw. The other thing I saw is that a concept that I unfortunately had thought was only there in people who are in business for a longer time also happens in the younger generation. That's burnout. I saw burnout happening in some of the companies that I invested in the startup companies, or kind of not quite in the startup phase, but in the round B phase, So and when I saw this, I realized it's all tied to one concept, and the concept is they did not have an understanding, a framework of what is needed to run your life successfully. And that's why it starts with the inner game. My book Leading to Thrive starts with the inner game and then goes to the classical leadership stuff, the outer game. And frankly, the inner game is all about energy. How do you get energy? Do you have enough energy? And if you don't have enough energy, then you can't bring it to anything. Or say it the other way, if you have plenty of it, you can bring it to business, you can bring it to your life, and you can lead a very, very fulfilled life. So that's the core. The inner game was the core motivation to sit down. The other thing is I also thought I can't do this simply by teaching one-on-one. I also have to put it in some version that people can pick up and read it or listen to it on an audiobook.
Which leads us to the book. And you mentioned the inner game versus the outer game. I put that in the lower third. I'll put that back up in a second. Because that's really where I want to focus. As I told you before we went live, that to me is the part that makes this book exceptional is the stuff about inner game. And so let's say a little bit more about what you mean about the difference between inner game and outer game.
Well, it's relatively simple. The inner game is basically how you personally lead the day-to-day life and your longer-term goals, your purpose, So, and then the outer game is whatever this energy you bring it to. And in my book, I cover the outer game mainly on the business side. But there's another aspect, where the inner game is equally important, is you also bring it to the other parts of life, whether it is in social engagements, whether it's your family, whether it's friendships, or God knows what, So without sorting out the inner game, there is no successful, sustainable outer game, no matter what you choose, And then probably let's come to the inner game so that we can probably get our hands around it. What is this? And it's really about understanding that it is about managing energy. It starts with managing energy, and it's old wisdom. I mean, it's body, mind, and soul. And I separate the mind into emotions and mental. So, and most people understand, if you don't treat your body well, if you don't work out, if your diet is bad, you sleep, whatever you drink, hydration, if that's bad, then you don't have energy. You can't get anything done. So. That's very well understood by most people. Or let me put it this way: it's well understood and probably not enough practice. So
yes, I was just going to say there's a difference between knowledge and action, Klaus. So let's just talk about that, because everyone knows, like mom taught us, right? Make sure you get good rest, eat a good balanced meal, like go exercise, all that stuff. Like everybody knows it, especially for leaders. At all levels, not just in the C-suite. But why is it that there's such a break between we know it, but we don't do it?
It's just hard. It requires discipline, and that's the other fascinating concept. We're not talking about a concept that, as somebody growing up in Germany, you learn that very early, discipline. And most people think it's all about discipline. You just plow through, but that's not the way it works. Because the moment you exert discipline, you exert energy. So you burn energy. You wake up in the morning. Energy burns through during the course of the day. You wake up in the morning. You should be relatively refreshed, and then you say, what do I apply it to now? Have a cup of coffee and get going. Boom, So, but the moment you have to exert discipline, your energy burns out. And I don't know whether you had this. I had that bad habit, that I was doing really well during the whole course of the day, in spite of all the dramatic things that happen every day. I come home, I have eaten well, I go to the fridge, I go to the freezer, and there it is, the pint of my favorite ice cream. And I think just one little spoon. And then I look, probably 15 minutes later, I look at an empty, complete package. I say, who ate that? Who ate that? And
Are you saying I have to give up ice cream, Klaus? Please tell me I don't have to give up ice cream.
Exactly. But so the concept of discipline is also, there's a trick to this. I mean, ideally you don't want to have to exert the discipline. So basically it means you have to eliminate from your environment all these cues, So ideally, if I would have opened the freezer and there would have only been things that I don't fancy, then look, I would have probably gone back, been frustrated for 10 minutes, but then said, okay, I drink some water, and then I go to bed. Two very good decisions, that I would have taken in spite of the very bad one, which came from the great intention that I should have in my freezer my favorite ice cream. So that's one thing. But I think on the physical side, my impression is most people understand it decently well, particularly when they are making it into leadership. But the things that are really not well understood are the ones that are dealing with the kind of emotional, mental, and spiritual. So Kevin, should we talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, as I wanted to get to this, the sources of energy, right? Yes. That's where we're headed. But before you do that, I wanted to say one of my mentors, I'm thinking about this related to your ice cream. He said, you know what? I love donuts, but I don't eat donuts because I don't drive by the donut shop. Like if I have to go 3 blocks out of the way, because I know if I drive by the donut shop, just like if I open the freezer, there's the ice cream. Like again, we know this, yes, but we don't do it. And there's this ripple effect when we're leaders. And of course, as a leader, it's not the ice cream at the office necessarily, but like if we're not exerting the discipline in the areas most important, because our folks are watching, right? We're modeling whether we like it, whether we like what they're seeing or not. And so it's especially important, I think, for us in a leadership role. But yeah, let's talk about the sources of energy, because I think this is a really important piece.
So we talked about physical already a little bit, right? So let's address the emotional, the mental, and the spiritual. I mean, let's start with the emotional. I think all of us have emotions, and I believe we have situations, stressful situations, when we have negotiations and the other side is trying to poke us or says things that we don't like, and we're getting angry, and we're getting angry. And the moment we're getting angry, something happens in us. We lose energy. A lot of the energy that we have, gets burned off, And that's the issue. Most people say, oh my God, I can't do anything with it. But there's a very, very simple trick. And the very simple trick is you have to understand the energy is what somebody else imposes on you, but it's completely inside of your own control. You are the ones that allow the energy to happen inside of you. So if you agree with me on that, you also can control it. So you can basically say that I'm listening here, goes into this side of the ear, goes out of this side of the ear. I concentrate on my breathing, I look outside the window, and I am not getting provoked, because I'm saying what this person is talking about is not relevant for me, and you're preparing your next argument, right? So breathing is a very, very important part in this, just to concentrate on breathing. The other side doesn't even notice that, it's very good. But the most important thing is that the moment it comes, you filter out in your head that this is somebody else's opinion, has nothing to do with whether it's my opinion or not. I don't accept that, and I will not allow my emotions to be wasted on this creep who's sitting across from me, or this negotiator who's sitting across from me. And sometimes it's the same. So
yeah, well, but the important part is I'm making it. You're saying, and I agree with you 100%. We have a choice to make. And
correct.
When we take responsibility for that choice, we have a lot better chance of managing.
Absolutely. And then on the mental side, that's a very interesting thing. On the mental side, and the mental side is a lot about focus. What does your mind focus on? And I give you a nice story of the old shoemaker, who has two sons. He wants to retire. He doesn't know which of the son he gives the business to. He sends them both to Africa, one on the west, one on the east coast. The first son from the west coast sends a note back and says, "Father, I have very bad news. There's no market here. Everybody is barefoot." The other son sends a note back and says, "Father, amazing. Send me as many shoes as you can get. This market is endless. Everybody goes barefoot." This, I think, this encapsulates it. And if there's one thing, there's many things, but one critical thing is all of the top leaders have a skill to see opportunities when others see challenges. And sometimes, I know quite a number of folks who train themselves for this. They basically say, when the whole world sees, oh, this is a big challenge, I try to sort it out and say, what's my opportunity here? Some people, a great friend of mine always says, common wisdom is almost always wrong, So, and I think this is a good mantra. It's not 100% true, but more often than not. And it helps you to say, when something comes on, okay, I have the common view, but is there another view? Could I see it in another way? What opportunity is in there? Is there something hidden that others don't see? This is how fortunes are made. So that's and also on top of it, when something bad happens, how do you frame it? How do you have a way to say, oh my God, and you go completely berserk? Or do you say, well, in reality, what I'm seeing here is this, and I will now work through it, right? That's on a
mental.
mental.
I love about what you, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
what I
please,
love about what you just said, and I want to underline it for people who are listening, is a lot of people hear opportunity versus problem or challenge, and they just hear positive thinking. Now, there's positive thinking in there, but you're saying I'm making a choice about how I look at it, not just saying, well, it's going to be okay. And so it doesn't mean that positive thinking isn't helpful, but you helped people, if they will listen to what you just said, frame it as something more than just that, which is really, really important. The last of the sources of energy, and I don't want to lose these, is spiritual. So talk about that for just a
Yes,
second.
spiritual, one of the most difficult chapters for me because, and, I mean, it is a very important, or can be a very important source of energy, but it usually, I mean, it's almost like a four-letter word, so that people don't talk about. And I mean, people say, hey, reflect on yourself, find something that's bigger than yourself, but I also think that, at least for me, having a belief in something greater than me, a creator, was very, very important in the worst times of my life. In the worst times of my life, it's not on the wonderful day. Today, the sun is shining out here in New York, so beautiful, beautiful. But I'm not talking about those days. I'm talking about the days when you are alone and you think, this is really bad. I don't know how I ever going to get out of this. And that's when a source like spiritual source, somebody who you can talk to, right, and kind of listen for advice, that works very well. So I call it the 24/7 radio station, that also has a 1-800 number that you can dial in, and it always gives you something. So my recommendation is, try it out, don't just throw it away, try it out, and no matter which belief system suits you well, try it out and see. And if you don't like it, you don't have to do it. I want to add one fifth thing which ties this all together, and that's purpose. Because what purpose does to energy, it works like what laser does to light. Light is very diffuse. The moment you condense it in a laser, it goes through even the toughest materials, right? And that's what purpose does to energy. The moment you apply a purpose, and it can be, most people think it's just one purpose. No, in reality, most people have multiple roles in life. If you have children, you probably have a purpose that you want to bring them up well. If you run an important business, you probably have a purpose that you want to make that business successful. So, but think about it. What do you really, really want to do with your life? And make this yours. And again, with purpose, if you feel like, it's not really giving me the trigger, then you don't have to follow that, and follow something else. But it's the thing that gets you out of bed. Your best test is, you wake up in the morning, kind of tired, it was a late evening before. The moment your mind goes, I am wanting to do this, that's what I want to do, you can tell, you get a shot of energy. You jump out of bed and say, yeah, I want to get onto this. I want to get onto this. If you feel nothing is coming to your mind, then it's probably a good time of necessary to reflect. And I know, Kevin, you read the book. You are the one who read the book. So one person who read the book. No, kidding. But there's a chapter in there on purpose of a study that was done of what do people say on their deathbed. And I find that super chilling, because what they say on their deathbed, nobody says, I wish I had spent more time in the office. What they do say, however, is, I wish I had allowed myself to be happier. I wish I had allowed myself to be happier. I mean, so they suddenly realize on their deathbed that happiness is their choice.
That's the thing.
That is the thing, And then another one is, I wish I had allowed myself to do more of what I wanted to do and listen less to other people.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Now, the good news is, hopefully it's not the last day in our life. Hopefully we have a lot of great time ahead of us. But make sure that question you ask yourself now, and make a course change if you need a course change, and think about it. Your life is still ahead of you.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. I want to talk about purpose a little bit more on the outer game side, because you've led large organizations, and you've written about it in the book, in the back half of the book as well. Again, everything in some ways, everything we're talking about is stuff that people who are listening are going to say, yeah, I already know that. Yeah, I already know that. But there's a big difference between common knowledge and common practice. I want you to share your wisdom and experience around purpose, and in how we help others find it, or how we coalesce it around our team or our business. Can you, like, what have you learned there? Because again, everyone talks about it, but like, how do we as leaders help our teams find that?
This is two questions in reality. The first one is your personal purpose, right? And then we can talk about how do you use purpose in business, two different things, intertwined, but not the same. So the first thing on how do you find your own purpose? I have always struggled with this concept. I really have to tell you. And that was one of the pleasures that I allowed myself in writing the book, because I said, if I'm going to write about it, I have to really master it. So I looked at a ton of stuff that was written about purpose and realized purpose has been the discussion of mankind since the existence of mankind, because it is something that's our innate nature. Why are we here? What are we going to do? The question that everybody's going to ask themselves, so. And I realized that that it's not just one purpose; it could be multiple purposes. Purpose can change over time as you are changing, and your situation changes over time. It's not that you have to hit it right away, but one of the tests I gave you already, I mean, does it make you jump out of bed quickly and be motivated? Does it get the spirits flowing? Does it make you feel, if you think this might be my last day on this planet, that you have led a fulfilled life? So these are good questions, but the answer is you only can find yourself. And you can find them also by sorting out the voices in your head. I mean, to basically find out which is me in those voices, or which is just somebody trying to impose their thoughts, mother, father, friend, sister, God knows what, colleagues who are trying to impose this on me. And I wrongly believe this is me. That's a very, very important thing, sorting that out. So then let's go to the business side. And on the business side, I would call it the vision for a business, that. And one of the things that I found fascinating, I've done a lot of restructurings in my life, and at that time when I started, I realized, and I looked also at some others that had not been so successful, because very often I was called in at a time when others had tried it already, and so I realized that one of the things that people were missing is that they didn't provide a positive vision, a soul. The soul of the firm, the purpose of the firm was missing. The emotional side was missing. And you have to somehow bring it back with early wins. You have to remind people what they are doing. I mean, I'm happy to share a story there of what one time I ran the angiography and X-ray business in Siemens. It was the foundation of Siemens Medical, and it was also obviously the oldest business. And at that time, computer tomography as well as MRI were much cooler, ultrasound. So I came in, and my colleagues referred to me, oh, here's a new guy who's running the rusty nuts and bolts business, and we were losing money for years. We were losing money. And if ever I had a talent in my team and they got an offer from somebody else, they were gone, So fortunately, I had asked to be as an intern apprentice in some of the hospitals before I took the role. And I had seen some stuff that we were able to do that other modalities couldn't do, like interventions, minimally invasive interventions. So I invited a patient to an all-hands meeting. It's a young lady, 25 years old or so, she came on stage at the end of the meeting. I didn't say much. I said she wants to talk about it. She then talked about how her life had become miserable because she had this very odd blood clotting disease, and how she had been diagnosed and treated with Siemens equipment. Now, while she was talking, first people thought, what is this? I mean, Klaus is bringing some girl we don't know, but the more she was talking about herself, the more people realized this has something to do with what we are doing here. And in the medical business, you have to document very finely who personally has been involved in building and developing things. So I gave her this list of the equipment that she had been diagnosed and treated with. And at the end, she said, I want to read out these names, and people come onto stage. I want to thank you for making my life livable again. These people came on stage. This is the northern part of Bavaria. People are not easily moved. So they came on stage and tears were flowing. They asked me at the end of it whether they can show her around. I said, sure, show her around. Take the evening. The head of the workers union came to me and he said, Klaus, thank you. I said, what for? He said, thank you. You've reminded us why we are here, and you've given us our soul back. From that moment on, the turnaround was in the pocket. We moved, and today it's one of the most profitable, one of the most successful business units still there. And I'm so happy, I'm so happy and attracting the best and brightest, So that's what I mean. We did a similar thing at Alcoa when we invited an astronaut, talking about the last minutes on the countdown, and when you are getting separated from outer space, very unpleasant environment, just through a skin that thick of aluminum, and knowing that it's been made by people who hold quality standards very, very, very high, that they won't even tolerate a grain impurity there. Gives them all the confidence, So that's very, very important. And it's no surprise that, some of the richest men on our planet, they all had these visions, Look at Amazon. Why did Bezos choose the word Amazon, the name Amazon? Because he had in mind the largest river of the world, flowing, bringing water to everyone, when he started as an online bookseller, with Microsoft, a computer on every desk, it was in our generation, a computer was something that you couldn't even think that a normal individual would be able to afford this, Yep. Or Elon Musk, a multi-planetary mankind, and everything stems from this, and the rest is history, So very important.
I appreciate you sharing those two stories because, especially the one I knew for sure. I was pretty sure you would tell if I prompted you semi-skillfully, and I think for all of us as leaders, we can take those lessons, because we don't have to be able to get an astronaut to come to our team meeting, but we can personalize the work. What I take from those stories is that how can we help people see someone that their work is impacting, rather than I'm just doing this work. Who is impacted? How are they impacted? And the more we can do that, the more we can help, as you said in your story, bring the soul back to the work. Yes. And when we can do that, we can start to change everything. I really appreciate that. Klaus, I knew we would get to this point in this conversation, and I would have gotten about a third of the way through the stuff I would like to talk to with you about. And I hope that what that does for everybody is to say, hey, I need to get a copy of this book, Leading to Thrive. But I do want to sort of shift into the final part of our conversation, and just a couple of more things before we go. I'd really like to know, because we opened this by saying successful in business and successful in life, personally and professionally, both. I'm curious, what do you do for fun?
A lot of things. I love music. I love all kinds of music. So from blues to soul to classical music to opera. I'm a big music fan. That's what I like. I like working out, swimming. In the summertime, to swim. I like it more outside than inside. I love to play tennis. Those are things, and I love to be with my family. I really get a kick out of this, and I also love to work with a lot of people all around the world. It gives me energy. It really gives me energy.
And the only thing you knew I would ask you is this: what are you reading these days? or as you told me, well, Kevin, I listen more. That counts. That's fine.
Yes. So you wouldn't expect that, So I'm currently listening to a book called The Great Expectations from Charles Dickens. So I've gone back to the classics, and I get great pleasure out of this. The one that I just finished, and it was a fantastic experience. I'd never read it before. It was The Count of Monte Cristo from Alexandre Dumas. Amazing, absolutely amazing book, amazing story, So, I have to tell you, when I read business books these days, I usually do read them, but I read them very fast. right? And yeah.
So I have to tell you, I told you before we went live that I was going to ask you this question, and this is the 500 plus. There's probably been about 500 episodes where I had a guest who I asked this question of, and we've gotten everything. We've gotten children's books, we've gotten science fiction, we've gotten everything, and we've gotten classics. But I'm pretty sure that until today, we've never had Great Expectations in the Count of Monte Cristo. So they'll be in the show notes, everybody, along with, of course, Leading to Thrive. Klaus, where do you want to point people? How can people connect with you? Where do you want to let them go to learn more about you and your work?
There's a website called Leading to Thrive. There you can send me a note. I'm on LinkedIn. That's actually the only social media that I really do personally. And other than that, the book you find on Amazon, and you find it also on other platforms all around the world. Yeah, and there's a great audiobook on that, read by a wonderful person, Rich Miller. Great voice, great voice, great voice. I love it. Great book. I would recommend that.
leading-to-thrive.com. You want to make sure you go there. That'll all be in the show notes, everybody. And now, everybody, before I say goodbye to Klaus and to you, a question that I ask all of you every single episode. If you've been here before, you know what I'm about to ask. The question is, now what? So you've had the chance to listen to this conversation, learn from the wisdom of Klaus. And the question is, what are you going to do? Because if you don't take action, sort of what's the point, right? Whether that's thinking about how you can reframe or help rekindle purpose for your team, or whether that's helping you think about how you're managing your energy in new ways, or whether that's how you think about how you can apply discipline differently in your life to help you manage that energy. It could be any of those things or 50 other things. It's not for me to tell you what that should be, but rather for you to think about the application you will take. Because one of the things that we said from the beginning is there's a lot of stuff that we're talking about that you already know. It doesn't matter what you know. It matters what you do. I hope you'll do that. If you do that, what you will have done is made this a valuable use of your time, hopefully raising your energy rather than lowering it. I hope that is true. Klaus, thank you so much for being here. It was a pleasure to spend this time with you.
Kevin, likewise, and see you soon.
All right, everybody. So if you love this, tell somebody else so they can love it too. And if you love this, wherever you're watching it or listening to this podcast, make sure you leave a comment. We'd love you to do that. But most of all, I hope you'll subscribe and come back next week for another episode of the Remarkable Leadership Podcast. Thanks, everybody.